Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to regular council meeting of Monday, January 9th. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas and New Year's, and we're all looking forward to an amazing 2023. So before we get started, I would just like to thank all those who attended Coffee with Council today. Good turnout, good thoughts, shares. So we truly appreciate hearing input from the residents. We have these second every second Monday. So just watch the town page, Facebook page, and there'll be notices where we're at. Therefore, I would like to ask if there's any additions to the agenda. I do have one. Patrick Coiffa will be our deputy mayor for this next 2 months, but does anybody else have anything to add? Okay, can I get a motion to accept the amended agenda, please? Tony? Patrick, or Tony, can I get a motion? Sam, please?
I move that council adopt the agenda as revised for the January 9th, 2023 regular council meeting as presented.
Seconder, please. Crystal? All in favor? Carried. All right, Patrick, before we move on, I'm going to get you to read your form, please.
Thank you. I, Patrick Coiffa, solemnly affirm that I will diligently, faithfully, and to the best of my ability execute according to the law the office of Deputy Mayor for the town of Drumheller for the months of January and February 2023.
Congratulations, Patrick. And thank you, Stephanie, for your help over the last couple months. All right, can I get a motion to accept the minutes of December 19th regular council meeting, please? Tom?
I move the council approve the minutes for the December 19th, 2022 regular council meeting as presented.
Seconder, Lisa? Comments? Tony?
Just one change there on page 10, motion 292. The last sentence is incomplete. I think the intention is to alleviate the financial burden to taxpayers.
Okay, anybody else? All right, all in favor? Carried. And can I please get a, Daryl, I guess I will request you on 6.1, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Municipal Planning Commission, just like most council appointed committees, have the requirement to appoint their members through council resolution. So we are constantly asking the public if they want to be on committees or boards in the community. The MPC has had a couple of people sort of time out. We've actually extended one person's time, and we have a fresh face that's actually asked to be on MPC. So Jason Jetty has, I believe he's taken his advanced land use planning course at the University of Alberta, and he has applied for the 3-year term for MPC. MPC has is recommending it. They've reviewed this application, they recommend it. And so we're looking for council to approve the appointment of Jason Jetty for the 3-year term expiring January 31st, 2026.
Motion, please. Stephanie?
I move the council approve the appointment of Jason Jetty to the Town of Drumheller Municipal Planning Commission for a 3-year term expiring January 31st, 2026.
Seconder, please. Tony, comments? Lisa?
Just want to say I've known Jason for a while and I think he's a great fit for that board and we're lucky to have him.
Very good. Anybody else? All in favor? Carried. Okay, let's move on to 7.1, please. Greg.
I beg your pardon. Yes, before council is a request for decision regarding the traffic bylaw draft 1022. We have conducted public consultations on 2 different occasions. Myself and members of my department have received input from citizens on phone, in person, and by email. And the draft attached to the council agenda has not been changed since first reviewed and at first reading last year. But we are ready and willing to, of course, make any changes, addendums at the behest of council after second reading, if so granted this evening. We are asking the council give second reading traffic bylaw 1022 as presented to open discussion on the proposed changes. The present bylaw is quite outdated, refers to laws that no longer exist. I'll summarize, I won't go over all of them, but to get the gist of everything. And bears little resemblance to the new draft bears little resemblance to the original bylaw from 2003. That bylaw was largely constructed with the emphasis on the RCMP to enforce that bylaw, which has rarely happened in my time here as a member of the RCMP and now as a peace officer and director of emergency services. It is often, the police often rely on the provincial statutes in most cases, and rarely will refer to a traffic bylaw. Further, there's a great deal of the old bylaw is taken up with truck permitting and oversized permits to be issued by the CAO or his delegate. And that is since a function taken over and working very well for several years now by a provincial contractor called Road Data. That is a very switched on crew and helps us through the Travis system and takes care of our truck permitting. For example, if Mr. Locker, for example, owned a company, wished to bring something into town, usually heavy trucks are not permitted on town streets, of course, but if need be to service a household or to supply something vital for construction, such as cement or steel beams or whatever it could be, things may be overweight, things may be oversized, and they are permitted. But first of all, we refer to the allowable sizes and what is reasonable. There are fees associated to it, and we're also always conducting inspections to make sure there's no road damage to any municipal roads as a result of an extraordinary or something different that may be traveling on our municipal streets and roads. A particular point in this bylaw that has drawn attention is the section where we make it prohibited to park, as is now permitted. Bus drivers are permitted rather, to park their bus in or near their front of their residence when it's not in service. We are the only, we have conducted, and one of my officers, Trent Cure, is also present, conducted extensive research into other communities in Alberta, school boards, etc., and we cannot find a lot of other bylaws in municipalities would class a bus as a heavy vehicle or as a large commercial vehicle, and which are not permitted to park on any street at any time unless under permit or unless servicing a household, which is a common term that a large commercial vehicle could be on a town street. We had some concerns raised over the parking of recreational vehicles in town. The changes made could be considered more robust, but we are in no way seeking to make it more difficult for people. And in fact, I believe we do offer an expanded time period in some instances for the parking of recreational vehicles on a street by a residence. We've had some input on parking from a great deal many citizens, but no real general theme or consensus as to what needs to be done. We are exploring the option of a paid parking initiative, and I will be completing a briefing note for council in the very near future as a separate. It's been my instructions and my information I've received that the council wishes a paid parking plan to be explored and perhaps initiated, and that's what I am doing and have been doing in some depth for the last few weeks. Comments about vehicles that's parked too long. and there's no enforcement done on it. Vehicles that perhaps belong to someone who may live in an apartment above one of the businesses downtown and may stay in excess of the 2 hours. Presently, unless parking is not loosely enforced, we enforce it, but it's either on officer generated or we get a complaint from a citizen, we follow up. There is no dedicated person that goes around, and councilors may be familiar with larger municipalities such as chalking of tires, or a dedicated traffic person that would travel around and enforce meters, which we don't have, or enforce certain parking times in certain zones, which we enforce it, but there's, for example, there was a large amount of input and hue and cry, for lack of a better term, about parking enforcement downtown. But in fact, in that time, we had issued one ticket in this 90-day period. There's a lot of verbal guidance given to people. There's one particular zone just around the corner from the former councillor Garbut's office that people always park in, and they're not supposed to. It's a site and a visibility hazard, as well as causing an issue at the corner. And that's a constant, but officers under my supervision are offering a great deal many verbal warnings to please don't repeat this conduct, and have had a variety of responses, of course, in the carrying out of this. But for the most part, we are not issuing a lot of parking tickets. Now, we can certainly change our tact, and we will if a paid parking initiative plan is instituted. Um, there's complaints about during the tourist season. Some citizens of certain parts of town feel their neighborhood is overtaken by um, the vehicles of tourists that may be attending a site such as the Big Dinosaur. Um, we've dealt with some of these people that have called us and have gone off. There's a lot of social media, I understand, but some people have taken it upon themselves to call us, and we have done some enforcement and guidance offered in that respect. A paid parking plan, such we're looking at, does have options for residents of Drumheller that are, of course, in the area and parking, to not be um, be opting out sort of the enforcement. There is a procedure, an acceptable legal procedure for citizens to register their vehicle, for example, and opt out and not be considered part of the enforcement plan overall. And I'll be explaining that further to council in the briefing note that I'm preparing. We had some discussion on on-highway vehicles, but again, there's some misunderstanding about the use of off-highway vehicles and where they can and can't be used. But for the most part, um, the present provincial laws and municipal laws that we have enforced are reasonable. The use on green spaces, and which is not permitted, or the use on town roads and streets, which is not permitted as well. And there is a great deal, many people that think, for example, we had one person that thought they changed the tires on their quad, they could use it on a town street. And that's, information given to them quite incorrectly, but they called in earnest. I spoke to them, and they don't have the safety features of normal vehicles, or side by sides do not have the signals, or they may have seat belts, but they don't have the usual safety features of a vehicle that any one of us may be driving at any one time. We've had concern over speeding in just general areas of town, but specifically some concern, as I note in part 6, Highway 9, Highway 10, Riverside Drive, um, and the enforcement officers under my command, that our peace officers have traffic authority and we are endeavoring to put together a new traffic plan for moving violation enforcement in the community. We have had several comments about the bus parking, school bus parking, and I list them all under the implications of bus parking. Um, there are no ways really to, I guess, assuage the fears of bus drivers that feel this is unfair. It is their livelihood, I understand, and it is a convenience. I understand from talking to people that have lived here for some time, instituted a while ago to help engage more drivers, make it more convenient for a bus driver to become a bus driver and offer them the convenience of parking. And I understand that parking near their residence, and especially during, during the cold months, of course. But we have canvassed several municipalities, reviewed several bylaws, and Trent in particular has spoken to school board officials for more than one. I've gone over most of these, just elaborated further in the headings further down the RFD. There are no express financial considerations, and we would endeavor a new traffic bylaw to be adopted in the spirit of public safety and modernizing our approach and enforcement of a bylaw. And I'm happy to. Trent's here as well. We're happy to answer any questions that.
Okay, Council, can I get a
Council may
motion,
have.
please? Tom, go ahead.
I move that council give second reading to traffic bylaw 10.22 as presented.
Seconder, please. Patrick, comments? Tom? Tony?
Appreciate the work on this, Greg. You're right. It's 20 years old. It's severely outdated, bordering probably not applicable in a lot of cases. I just want to speak to the bus driver one, especially, and I recognize you've done some work with other communities, and we're probably unique in that regard. That we're probably one of few, if not the only one, that doesn't allow bus parking on the roads. But I don't see it as being a problem in the past. I don't know where we'll go in future. Wondering if there could be some leniency there. I notice under section 16 we have, with respect to RVs, which are maybe similar size, to allow parking on the street as long as it's in front of your house and not obstructing a neighbor. I think there's other avenues in the traffic bylaw that if it is a hazard, you could still deal with it. But rather than going to the extreme and saying no parking, that we could maybe accommodate a middle of the road approach there. And maybe the RV section would provide similar as far as size goes and being in front of your house.
No, I understand, Mr. Locker, and we will carry out the wishes of council. We were putting together a bylaw strictly concerned for trying to be reasonable and fair, but for public safety. And we are not, I will always advocate on the safe side of things. Sometimes looking out for somebody that may not realize, what they're at peril for or the hazard presented. But we will, as I say, we have had complaints, several over the years. I cannot draw myself to any one incident that caused any great, any accident or any terrible, mass vehicle, jam up, anything like that. We have had one location in particular that the person has been deliberately recalcitrant to cooperate, but there are other ways of getting around that. If they cease to see the value in going along with a verbal
Yeah.
guidance.
Yeah, I understand that. The whole purpose of the exercise is safety and updating the bylaw. It's not that it's meant to be rigid and enforceable. I mean, it's still a complaint-driven thing. I think every option should be encouraged to do off-site parking and, removal on weekends and stuff like that. But from a safety aspect, we have to update it, and I'm just asking for some flexibility in that regard.
Patrick?
Just kind of following on the same line as Councillor Locker, I appreciate the research that's been done into this, looking at other communities, but I guess the information I would want is kind of the number of complaints, see-click fix, road damage. Those are the type of things, and obviously hazards too, that you are dealing with. Like, how many hours is this taking out of your time? Like, that's the information I'd need to base a decision on, because we permitted it 20 years ago. probably a decade ago, I know it came up to council, and and when it was brought forward, there didn't seem to be much interest in the public on pursuing changes at that time. So I guess I want to identify the problem before we make such a change, and not just on anecdotals.
Lisa?
Got a bunch. So start with section 3. My concern on that one was in regards to the boulevard parking. So if you look at Elgin Hill, the people park across from their homes on the boulevard. So is that something that we would disallow completely? Cause there's areas where there is not adequate parking for, like, say, a 2-vehicle house that don't have back alley parking.
No, and we understand that too, Mrs. Zacharak. Yes, there are many things that, how do you say, it's not that we're unmotivated. We kind of don't place a great deal of enforcement emphasis on because we do understand that some people are strapped for parking. If it is a sightline hazard or any kind of hazard for anybody traveling on the road, pedestrians, then we would have to address it. But there are parking violations that we know that go on, and I'm, how do you say, we don't make a big deal of it, I guess, because we know that's just what you're saying. Some people are strapped, and it's nice to have the authority and to tell people of our authority. And if it becomes an issue or if we have to deal with it, this is what we can do, informing people and telling them. But we don't have to. I'm not trying to be funny, drop the hammer on everybody for every little thing.
Okay. No, that's good. And then section 13, I think you already discussed. Is there an area that addresses cell phone use while driving to park, to pull over? Because I noticed in the bylaw there that no pulling over on any highway, which refers to all roadways, is permitted. Is not permitted, sorry.
You're talking off-highway vehicles?
No, just regular personal passenger vehicles. So maybe I'll try to clarify that a bit better. So if I get a phone call on my cell and I don't have Bluetooth, I'm not allowed to talk on my phone, so you have to pull over. I know on highways, like provincial highways, you're not allowed to. You have to turn off into an approach and go a bit, right? But in some of the wording in this, it seems like you're not even allowed to pull over, even if it's safe to do so within the community.
No, that would never be an issue, and we enforce cell phone or distracted driving through the provincial law. But I cannot envision an officer like double jeopardy or feeling with somebody nowhere to go off, not offering them that option. Or it's the people that we're enforcing the worst of the worst. The people that, and here's a good example, will stop someone, and this actually happened recently. Person is on the phone and asking the officer, "What's the problem here?" And this is literally what is going on, and it's very, very easy to enforce that. And it's not like, I know what's against the law, but this was an important call. Well, I'm not trying to be facetious, but okay, but I mean, what are we supposed to do here? What would you have us do in such a situation? So we're not looking to corner or give anybody nowhere to go, but we're seeking a happy medium in the spirit of public safety.
Okay, and then my next one is in regards to the mobile unit park. I'm assuming that refers to like an ATV or UTV park.
What section, Mrs. Colbert? I'm sorry, or Mrs.
I didn't write the section
Zachary?
on that one,
Oh, I'm
but
sorry. Okay.
mobile unit park. So it'd be in the definitions, I think.
Definitions, Ed?
Sorry.
Page 22.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's for like UTVs, ATVs to use, which I don't think we have currently in the town of Drumheller.
No, the mobile unit is things we've come across, such as a living unit or a commercially mobile unit. Sorry? Yes, sorry, like an ACO trailer or things like that, yeah.
Because I was just wondering how that would play into how further on in the bylaw it states on town land, you're not allowed to use ATVs or skidoos, right? So I was just wondering how, in the long run, would one person pass from, say, they had a quarter section in town is zoned agricultural, but on the other side of, say, the town property is an area that they could trail ride on an ATV, skidoo, whatever, right? So, and they're not permitted on the roadway, so I just wanted to have clarity, like, we're not gonna throw the book at them if they cross
No.
over town property.
No,
Okay.
I can't, if somebody is just passing through or not, you know, if they're not committing any damage, I cannot envision anyone,
Okay.
you know.
Do, do, do. And then I just wanted to know, because I didn't see it, was there a better definition or a definition for a personal passenger use vehicle that is actually transporting people to medical appointments that is not considered a commercial vehicle?
Can you draw me to which
So as an
unit?
example, somebody's using their vehicle and charging $200 to go to Calgary to take somebody to an appointment. Well, that doesn't fall under the commercial definition, and it doesn't fall under the private passenger definition. So I just thought that perhaps
If
there
that
should be some
originates in
clarity.
town, if that originates in town, that person would then be subject to the livery bylaw, right? Medical
Correct, but
transport,
we should
yeah.
have something to reflect that in this, right? So, because there's numerous people that are doing that service, and there's no guidance, shall we say.
Okay, it's not exactly, we do address it in the livery bylaw, I'm not sure.
The livery,
Yeah.
Pardon me?
livery, yeah.
The livery bylaw address it, I'm not sure it's,
Okay, well, that's
warranted
fine.
in
However,
everything.
I think there should be a definition and that reflects that use of the vehicle and referral to that bylaw, just to give better clarity. Because there's a lot of people that think they don't need to follow that.
okay, I can look at that, I'm not exactly clear on what you're asking, I'm sorry. I'm not exactly,
Okay,
Right.
so a husband and wife team have a sedan, four-door sedan, and they advertise on the down low that they take people for compensation to have medical appointments or whatever, out of town or even in town. Your regular SPF 1 insurance doesn't cover that, but in the commercial wordings in this bylaw, it doesn't cover it either. So you need some more clarification, is basically
okay,
what I'm saying.
we can look, but it is addressed. It is addressed in the livery bylaw, we do have authority there. I know.
Correct, but what I'm saying is you just should have a link or something to say for further information in regards to private passenger vehicle use when used in commercial settings. Please see.
I think she's looking at page 20, commercial vehicle, H.
Thanks, Tom.
I'm sorry, I don't wanna hold you up, I'm gonna have to look at this, I promise,
Section BB in the definitions, taxi is included.
However, so I understand what you're saying, but it's not considered a taxi because it doesn't fall under the taxi bylaw and doesn't meet the requirements of a taxi. Taxi has to have a meter installed, right? And the rate is set by the town of Drumheller. So when you're taking just somebody to go to a medical appointment, you don't have a meter installed in your vehicle.
but a person, if I may just, a person who transports for medical is a broker and must be licensed as a broker, and we do have people that are licensed as brokers under the livery bylaw. We do have that. I'm happy to look at this, I'm not.
I just think a little clause saying that should be
Okay.
in there.
I'm,
Yeah.
will,
And
Any
then
others?
I'll just do one more, and then everybody else I know has a bunch. So 39.9, and that's in regards to the spikes on the wheels. So a lot of big rigs have I don't know how you want to refer it to, like deer chase awayers or whatever, right, on the tires. So do the big rigs have to fill out permits for that when they come through the town of Drumheller? Is that part of our responsibility, or does that fall under Travis, or?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
So big semi truck.
Yeah.
You know how they got the big tires on the front that have the big spikes coming out the side of the tire? So in on 39.9, it says that. Get to it.
We have not come across that.
Well, I just wonder if it's something that's old that needs to be removed, or.
We're talking tracking rubber, not rubber tires. We're talking, we have this in here. We haven't come across it, but this is mostly meant like, bulldozers and other equipment that have from time to time caused, it's just an all-encompassing definition, that have caused damage on a town. If there was such a vehicle, and I don't recall the semi at any point coming in with cleats or chains or anything like that, that we would already have authority to deal with that under the Traffic Safety Act, but this would give us. and
Yeah, I
suspect
think
it would
what
be
Lisa's
before
talking
here.
about, this 39.9 talks about spikes, lugs, or whatever that are on the bottom of the tire that would project down. And she's talking about some of the vehicles have kind of spikes sticking out from the wheel, like the hubcap. And we have nothing to say about that.
That generally isn't a safety thing. That's more say a, how do you say, a fancy hubcaps, but I'm not discounting it. If it was any kind of a hazard, we would have authority already existing to deal with it. This would be additional authority. I'm not sure if I'm making myself.
I think this is intended to keep the roads from getting destroyed, basically, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, oh, that's fine. There's miscommunication.
all good, Lisa? Okay, Crystal.
Thanks. I just have two quick ones. I'm going to refer to 37.1, animals or animal drawn vehicle on highway. It specifically relates to the last sentence, no animal or animal drawn vehicle shall be operated on a sidewalk or any part of a trail system. Does that include the new CN rail trail? Because in the lease agreement, it actually says horses are permitted. So,
No, this was written to mean,
okay.
but this one of those things is open to change or review.
Okay.
It was originally written, like, I'm not saying, you guys are the final authority. I'm writing a, you know, the essence of a law to keep things
Right.
clean and safe. But it was written, yes, for no animals, so nobody can bring their pet goat or large animal,
Okay.
but I mean, we can certainly look at
Yeah,
that.
just
Yep.
because I know in that lease agreement, it does say that horses are permitted on the CN rail line, so just maybe something to consider. And then 43.6, sorry, I'm just scrolling down here. 43. It refers to merchandise on sidewalks and streets, so I'm just thinking of the patio extensions that are on the roadways right now. I know some businesses have put some merchandise out on those patios, so just maybe something to consider. That might still be an option, because as this reads, it says you cannot. So
Mrs. Thread, so 43.3, or which one are you?
no, 43.6.
43.6?
Yeah,
Okay.
I. So, and then bus, I'm just going to give my little bit of tidbits. My child's bus driver, because they're so short of bus drivers, she does two routes. So the first route, the kids get dropped off at the school about 8:10 a.m. and then she does her second route. And then when the second route comes to pick up those kids, they're not being picked up to go home from the school until 4 o'clock, even though they're out at 4:16. So, just trying to ensure that we're going to have bus drivers. And so, again, like with Tony, I had suggested maybe there's permitted bus parking during cold snaps, right? Specifically, so that the buses could be warmed up in front of their homes. So maybe that could be a consideration. So, thank you.
Stephanie?
So back to the buses again. My son, for a while, his bus driver drove two routes, and the second route was always late for school. And then they were late going home, of course. So I'm all in favor for keeping bus drivers working and hopefully bringing more to the community. Also section 27, bus parking. It says something that any kind of bus can't park on town property or town parking lots unless they are dropping off, picking up, or waiting to be picked up. So I was just concerned about who owns the parking lot around the swimming pool, arena, and Big Dinosaur in regards to hockey buses and tourist buses parking there. And if they're parked there waiting, are they technically waiting to pick up and they don't have to worry about it?
That's town property. I mean, the big dinosaur parking lot and around, that's all town property, and that's not an example. Those aren't things that we would, unless there was some blatant violation or disregard for something, right? That a visiting hockey team or some other school coming in for a tournament or, you know, anything that could happen. I in no way can envision, unless there's some blatant violation or some reason they shouldn't be there, that we could, you know, address and support and make clear to people that you can't be here because of this reason. We've never ever, and I don't envision that ever, unless there was some, as I said, overlying, which I never know what it might be.
Okay,
Overlying, you know, concern, threat, parking hazard, something else going on.
okay.
Other
I was
police
just worried
incidents,
about
you
the wording on that one was also. Thank you.
know.
Then 42.3, it says that for the snow removal, that signs will display the day of the week snow removal operations will be conducted. I just noticed today that some of our signs out don't have the day of the week.
No, Dave and I are reviewing that in the town. We need to come up with a better communications policy. We need to come up with improved signage and an improved, how do you say, a more precise cadence of how we put these things out. The public is aware now there will be snow operations, but I think at times there's genuine confusion on their part. And we own that right now, but we are working. We do have a plan in place too, and this may well, not be the exact wording that suits, but we understand there is a deficit there, and we have discussed it with the CAO, and that needs to be addressed. There's no way around it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I noticed a lot of
Yeah.
vehicles were still parked on that street and the grader was kind of moving around them and stuff. So that's great to know.
So presently, sorry, if I could just say, Ms. Price, one more thing. Presently, if a vehicle is in the way of snow operations, we do our best to, locate the owner and just please inform them if they're in the way and could they move their vehicle. That's only happened 2 or 3 times, I think, since December, but we do make an effort, like one of my officers will make an effort to find that person, locate them and ask them, please move, and this is the reason why. But they're not, and only in the last resorts of, somebody, you know, not caring or not listening, asking, you know, not adhering to a word of advice, would we tow it in. I don't think we've towed anyone this year yet, so.
Thank you. And then section 40, permit required. I just want, I guess it to clarity. Just when people are like protesting or demonstration, do they require a permit?
Well, ideally, they won't always, in the spirit of free and democratic society. But if somebody was to hold, as the wording is here, organize, hold, lead, march, or participate in a special event resulting in a roadway closure, if somebody wished to protest and present a case to the CAO of a road requiring a roadway closure, I'm sure it would be looked at, and whether it was decided in the public interest, I can't say. But,
Oh, perfect.
But, yeah,
Thanks, Greg. That's all I have.
okay, thanks.
No, you go ahead.
Really quick little things. Is there any areas in town where skateboarding and scooters are completely prohibited? When you read this, it says prohibited or not prohibited. Are there areas that we do have designated to not have skateboarding or?
We don't have signage, specifically anywhere that I know of right now.
Okay. Okay. Maybe the courthouse, but that's private property. Well,
Yeah, that would be.
pro-
I
provincial
already asked
private
it, but that
property.
rings a bell, Mr. Kowalski.
Yeah.
I believe the courthouse. But,
Um,
most of the time, as long as the kids are not at skateboard park, if they're reasonable, we catch the odd one in the middle of the street, it's unsafe.
Mhm.
Officers will ask that person to please don't in the middle of the road. It's just not safe. All drivers aren't paying attention. For the most part, if the kids are Not, not in the way of any old folks walking around or mothers with carriages or being unreasonable. We generally not an issue.
And yeah, I must commend you on that for being reasonable with so many of these things. It's nice to have the tools there, but use them when
Exactly.
needed.
Yes, sir. Yes.
We're talking about graffiti and defacement. I would consider a crosswalk a traffic device.
Hmm.
Okay, good. And the other one, just following up with Councillor Soretta, animals or animal drawn. I think there should be some thought into that if we are having on our pathways the difference between having a horse ride along or a 700, dragging another 1,000 pounds on steel wheels could do different sorts of damage. So I think that there's some consideration there. Thanks.
Tom.
Thank you for this great work you've done on this, Greg. I would like to just preface any comments I have with this, like any bylaw, will be reviewed. And for example, land use bylaw is a good example. I mean, we came up with a new land use bylaw and we've revised it 2 or 3 times already. So we will try to get this as best we can, and then I'm sure we'll find some things that work and some things that don't work, and probably look at it again. So people don't feel that this is written in stone, even when we come up with a version, because we're always looking at it. And if something doesn't work, then we revise it. I will get on, first of all, to the bus question. And I guess I thought you answered it very well, that safety, in my opinion, kind of trumps everything. And if we have any vehicle parked on a street and it's blocking a view, it's restricting the flow of traffic, I don't care if it's a bus, it's a semi, if it's an RV, it's whatever. That is an unsafe situation and that's unacceptable. So to me, I mean, if you have a bus parked on Riverside Drive, for example, that's different than if you have a bus parked on a smaller residential green tree kind of a suburb street. 2 totally different cases. I mean, a bus in the green tree suburb would be blocking half the road. A bus on Riverside, you don't even hardly notice it. So I don't know what the answer is to that maybe you'd have to look at each individual case or something if somebody wants to park out front of their house. But I can see in some situations it not being an issue, in some situations that it would be. Just going through some of the comments, talking about downtown parking, and it frustrates me a little bit when people say, oh, there's no parking downtown. And I look at, all the parking by the Community Futures, by the 7-Eleven, there's lots and lots of parking. It isn't immediately adjacent to a business. And we seem to have that expectation in town that, if I can't park within 5 car lengths of the business that I want to attend, then there's no parking. And yet people in Drumheller, myself included, will go to Cross Iron Mills and park a half a mile away from the shop I'm going to and have no problem. So I think people are going to have a little bit of a change, that when we will get more people downtown, and that's certainly the plan with our downtown area revitalization plan, that people might have to walk a block or a block and a half, to get to their stores. And we can accommodate seniors, with handicap parking and seniors parking and all sorts of things like that. But I think people have to kind of get that in their mind a little bit, that maybe they're going to have to walk, a little bit further in the future when things get busier. The one comment regarding speeding, I know in the summer I travel around to many, many different communities, doing golf tournaments all over the place. And I won't even mention pickleball just yet, but when we go to these communities, very often some of the people at the golf course will say, make sure that you don't speed in this community because we've got photo radar. And the word goes out that you just don't speed because they got photo radar everywhere and you will get tickets. And so they don't want to, have visitors get tickets. So I'm just thinking, photo radar for some of these communities is very effective deterrent. And by the way, it also makes the community a lot of money. But just something to possibly think about. Next page. Under the definitions, definition M on page 21, electric scooter. I'm just wondering, when I look at electric scooter, being involved with a lot of seniors and seeing the scooter parking lot at Sunshine Lodge, I'm just wondering where the seniors type scooters fit in, and if we maybe need a definition for them. You know what I'm talking about?
Mobility aid.
Mobility aid.
Mobility aid is considered a pedestrian under the law already.
So we have people driving on streets, driving on sidewalks, driving everywhere, but they shouldn't drive on the streets. But
Well, it's considered a pedestrian, Mr. Zarisky.
yeah,
It's
and
the
some of
same
these,
applicable.
like there's all sorts of different types, right? There's indoor ones and outdoor ones, and there's off-road ones, and so they would be restricted to sidewalks if they're considered.
Well, we take our cue from the provincial law and the mobility and the access, the various guidance and laws, but it's considered a pedestrian, sir, under the law. So if a pedestrian, I mean, we wouldn't want to see, there has been the odd senior that have offered a bit of guidance to over the years, saying what they're doing, where they're riding is less than safe and could be a hazard to themselves. But for the most part, they're considered well, I understand people, we must be compassionate and we don't want anybody getting hurt. They have these mobility aids and they're a terrific help with somebody has a compromised perhaps ability to get around, but they are considered a pedestrian, so it's fairly lenient as to what can or. Okay. I'm more worried about the running out of battery power on some of the longer trips than I am if there's careless or negligent, use, which we don't ever see at all. Okay. That's what it is, sir. It's a pedestrian.
So just looking at page 29, and we talk about recreational vehicles, and I guess that to me is a bit of a broad category. We have recreational vehicles that can be a minivan, like a Volkswagen van, and then you can have recreational vehicles that will be, 40-foot motorhomes. And so to me, to kind of lump those in the same category is not quite fair. I mean, you have a 40-foot motorhome parked outside, or you have a minivan parked outside. The 40-foot motorhome could be a hazard because of visibility and restricting the flow of traffic, whereas the van wouldn't be. So I'm just wondering if that might be broken down. I mean, there are different categories, for example, class A, B, C, D, whatever, motorhomes, fifth wheels and that kind of stuff. So it just seemed a little bit broad to lump all of those together when they could be, totally kind of different situations. 17.2 trailer, page 79. The comment that I've had from people is that when we have a tradesperson, say, working on a house, and whether that's redoing the roof or redoing the inside of the house, whatever, they would have a trailer and parked it outside, on the street of that house. And in the past, if it had to be hooked up, and if they had to go to the co-op and buy some nails or something, they literally had to hook up their trailer, drive it over the co-op, and then drive it back and then park it out. So I'm just wondering if a solution might be if we could look at our development permit process and even have some verbiage in there or something to the effect is if you're a tradesperson, you're building a house and you want to park a trailer out on the street, maybe this could be included in their development permit, and then maybe exempt them from, any kind of a breach of this particular bylaw.
We can work through these fairly easily. Most contractors, we're more concerned most of the time with an unattached trailer being stolen. And I fail to see sometimes the purpose of the original bylaw 0103, and it must be attached all the time. Officers under me have been instructed, for the most part now, the current staff that I have, to not, if somebody's working with us, they're working as an electrician, it's a carpenter, somebody, we're not here to impair somebody's you know, livelihood or anything like that. And if the vehicle is not a safety hazard, it's chalked and it's secured in place, we generally are fine with it. We are more worried about it, quite frankly, being stolen, and which has happened from time to time. This allows for 3 days. We could expand that. I mean, we've researched bylaws all over North America on this exact part, and it goes from no restrictions at all.
Yeah.
To, our previous one presently enforced where it must be attached all the time, which isn't really, that's not reasonable. That is not reasonable. We could remove it completely.
Page 31.
Sorry, Mr. Risky, just to clarify this
Yeah.
point, sir. This could be considered to be removed completely, and a trailer could be left. That's a possibility with no ruling whatsoever, but then it's open to, it could be open to a little bit of abuse by the wrong intending person.
Yeah, you could have
My
trailer parked
officers use a
forever.
great
Yeah.
deal of discretion already to not hamper, we're not here to hamper somebody's livelihood, and that's exactly what they've been told.
Can I just interrupt and add on that, Tom? I think the thing is, I know that when there was people building and they wanted to just go get a coffee at Tim Hortons, they had to hook up to their trailer and then go. And I think that's all we're asking is just a bit of flexibility on
Yeah,
that,
was-
not full day, like, I don't think you want it sitting there forever.
But just to add to that, that's already addressed in 17.2, where you can unhook for 3 days as long as your trailer is secured.
We could make that longer.
Yeah,
whatever
no,
council
I'm
would
just
like, or-
thinking if we put it into the development permit, I mean, the person would have to have a development permit if they're doing a building or construction or, and maybe even just some, information in there about that. Or refer to this, kind of a thing, yeah. Page 31, this vehicles remaining idling, to power or heating or refrigeration system. So I know we've had problems with that in the past, specifically down by Westergaard and Tim Hortons and that refrigeration units going all night long and whatever. And I'm just wondering if we should have a little bit of information for some of the truckers who want to park their vehicles in the town overnight. And I think we encourage that. I mean, if these people want to stay overnight, they're spending money and whatever. And the one area that we regularly see vehicles is on 575 down by, yeah, just off, you know where I'm talking about. And I'm just wondering if we should, kind of spread the word or have information that would be a really good place because you could leave a vehicle idling there all night long if you wanted. And I don't think it's going to really bother anybody. Whereas there are different places, as we said, down by Tim Hortons, whatever, where it did bother people. So I don't know, just a thought there. Now, the problem that we have had down by 575 across from Peterson's is that we've had garbage dumped there. And I know we talked about that in the past, that putting up some garbage things there or putting up some signs or putting up, welcome to Drumheller, you're good to park here, just don't litter or, get the mayor there kind of directing people or, I don't know. Page 31. Page 31, I didn't see a definition. We talk about an abandoned vehicle and it talks a little bit about an abandoned vehicle on page 32. So a vehicle is abandoned, has been left attended, is parked on a highway in contravention, impedes or prevents access, is not displaying a so I'm just wondering if we could incorporate some of that into a definition in the definitions for an abandoned vehicle, so we know what that is. Because we have, we talk about an abandoned vehicle, but we don't really specify exactly what it is. The other thing I would mention is there any stipulation in terms of the number of vehicles that could be on private property without being a commercial car dealership, rental car facility, or whatever? Is there any kind of a number that we would look at? I mean, if somebody has 10 vehicles parked in their front yard, is that okay? And where would that be in contravention of this?
Well, it's not traffic, it would be in community standards.
Is that in the community standards,
or
like
the-
a number
or
of?
the, tourism corridor, or in development. We have.
Okay, so
authorities.
that's already covered. We don't need that.
Well, that's not traffic, sir. That's placement on private property.
Okay.
That's not a traffic
Yep.
matter.
Another comment, page 35. And this is more of a facetious comment. Right at the top of the page, no pedestrian shall cross or attempt to cross from one side of a highway to another. You know, I tell people I live in Drumheller, Alberta, and I can walk across my main downtown street and people will stop for me. And I say, you know, that's one of the good things about living in a small town. So I don't know. I'm just being silly, but I know I shouldn't jaywalk, but it is. It's kind of a nice thing. Whereas in Calgary, you get run over. So, the last thing I have, I think, well, it's almost the last. 36.1. We talk about electrical cords, water hoses going across sidewalks. With our recent cold spells, we have lots of people who don't have access to parking at the back of their lot, so they have to park out front. So they want to plug in their vehicle. And walking around the town, we've seen all sorts of different contraptions, some more effective than others. You know, we'll have a nice lattice work thing with going across the sidewalk, and it looks actually quite nice, and it's quite effective, and it's quite safe. And then we have other people that just kind of run them right across the sidewalk, and other people who kind of tie them to the branch of a tree here and a fence there and hang them down. I'm just wondering if we could come up with maybe a little bit of a standard as to, you know, we understand that you're going to have to plug in your vehicle. There's nowhere at the back of your place to plug it in. And you do specify, you know, it has to be 8 feet above the sidewalk. And I'm just thinking, you know, if we had some kind of a standard and we could even maybe involve some of the local welders in town, and just say, you know, this is what we want for a standard. And if you could weld these up for people and you know, make them available at a reasonable price, then we would have maybe a little bit more consistency, and we could maybe help out some of these people who, you know, need this, and just, you know, kind of, to me, it's kind of like a rain barrel that we're offering a solution to something, rather than just kind of nailing them for it.
Well, Mr. Zrisky, all due respect, we're not nailing anyone. We offer a great deal of guidance for people to put them across a sidewalk if we get a complaint. The people that do make an effort to string it, you know, above the walkway, we appreciate. Officers have not laid one sanction in my time, but we offer a lot of guidance to people and suggestions that we understand you're up against it. To put your vehicle has nowhere place to park, you run it across the sidewalk, but it is inherently unsafe. And please consider something else. Sometimes they listen, and sometimes people don't. We get it, but we're deliberately lenient because we know people are up against it, trying to keep their vehicles plugged in so they can go to work. So we're caught. It's not a case of us being indolent. It's trying to be somewhat reasonable because people, we understand what they're up against. I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess,
you know,
going back to safety, you know, I mean, number one consideration again is safety. And you have, you know, wires going across sidewalks. You have somebody tripping. I mean, that's not acceptable. So if we could help out, you know, in that way, that might be good. Page 39.
Can I just add?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a neighbor who actually, rather than the 8-foot piece that goes over the sidewalk, they used, it just covers the cord on the sidewalk, and it kind of just nice and round, and you can still shovel over it, walk over it. It's not a tripping hazard, and I think that's also a really nice.
the odd person
way to
does
do
that.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they make an effort to make it less of
Yeah.
an obstruction. But we understand the difficulty people are facing.
Just top of page 39. Vehicle, highway, vehicle towing a trailer load unless the load is completely covered by a tarpaulin or other device, or is secured in such a manner that no portion of the load can. So that means any kind of a load has to be covered by a tarpaulin. I thought my understanding was, for example, a dump truck, if the load didn't go above the side, then you didn't have to cover it. Maybe that's not right anymore.
No, it's just risky. The tarping of vehicles is a municipal responsibility. It's not covered in any provincial law, except if something did fall off, it would fall into, right at present, the insecure load. A rock, I mean, it doesn't, a lot of people don't think that way necessarily, but a rock could fall off of a vehicle, go through somebody's windshield. And if an investigation did indeed lead to the vehicle, or sometimes people don't have the info, their windshield gets smashed, the vehicle drives away, they don't know who did it. But right now, under provincial law, it's insecure load. A rock falls off, more likely people envision a load of lumber or something, or PVC piping or something falling off as an insecure load. But that's how we would deal with it right now. But inside the municipal boundaries, tarping is a municipal responsibility. So no matter what, it could be a flat deck where they've unloaded, and we've had these incidents where a person has a flat deck, they've unloaded it, but they're driving away and they've left a rock or something on the deck, and it's actually hit a vehicle and caused damage. Um, that's technically an insecure load.
So, yeah, and that's fine. I perfectly understand that, and I agree with that. So I have had comments that we have had flood mitigation trucks with full loads with not tarped. So that was a comment that was made to me. And also snow removal. Obviously, the snow piles up over the top of the truck, and those are not tarped. So
Well, it's not a requirement right
just,
now.
yeah,
It's not a requirement right now.
okay.
For us to do that.
So anyway,
we have
just a
we-
consideration that.
Yes, sir. We have spoken to the contractors for flood mitigation because, and we had a mixed, we had a response, they would comply, but in the actual practice, we found some were tarped and some weren't. But it's an ongoing, we understand that, but still.
My last comment, page 41, just about done. Street furniture. So do our Dino Arts dinosaurs fall into the category of street furniture? And if so, we have lots of kids getting lots of pictures of tourists on street furniture. So I'm just wondering how that would be viewed. I know there was a time when they were not allowed to climb on the dinosaurs, and our bylaw would take exception to that. So I'm just wondering how that might work into this.
Well, we needed some authority for such things. We're not out, looking to mom and dad with a 1 and a 3-year-old on the dinosaur and put the clamp on them. We could revise the wording of this if it offers council more comfort. But it's our intention to, it's more like the caper where we come across somebody who's being deliberately negligent, perhaps intoxicated, damaging such property. But it's not our intention to go after children or anything like that. It's a case of people that should know better, damaging things they know they shouldn't be damaging.
Thanks, Tom. Anybody else? Go ahead, Lisa.
Just got one in regards to the fee schedule. Do you guys happen to know how much it costs if somebody decides to fight a ticket or a violation?
The cost of our procedure?
Yeah.
No, I don't have that.
Okay, so
strict information.
word on the street was it costs $190 just for the lawyer to show up if somebody's fighting the ticket. So I'm just curious if perhaps we need to have the fees in line with what the cost to us might be in the long run.
Our costs.
Yes.
Yeah, our costs, I can't give you I don't have the.
And I realize that, Greg. I'm just saying maybe it's something we should look at. Cause
we've had some that, and that just might be one appearance. We've had some that are way beyond that to prove our case, and some that we actually deal with ourselves. That the person offers a reasonable explanation, and we can find a way to.
So to get it, and I get it, but when it's costing us say $500-600 to fight a $50 general penalty, kind of seems silly, right? Like we should at least have our bottom end covered. Just my 2 cents.
Well, that's a tough question. I'm not saying no, but I'm saying we assign a higher cost for everyone because the odd person may, I'm not trying to be flip or anything, but we would assign a higher cost, a higher fee on sanctions because the odd person may fight it. I can see us with a guaranteed, then if the price was to go up, I could see us having many more contested tickets, as opposed to the philosophy that Trent came up with, as opposed to a single fee for some of them, and only some offenses would enter the higher realm. So we could look at that and come back with something, but I think it's a double-edged sword, so to speak. I don't know if that's an answer, frankly, from my point of view. And I've been doing this a long time, and I'm not so sure that it could be, but I'm not really, I don't know right now.
No, I get you. I just think maybe it's something we should think about or look at, cause, some of the people kind of say it's a bit of a joke. You know, I'm gonna go find a $50 ticket. They might as well just have thrown it out and not charged me if it's gonna cost
Well,
them this much
no,
more, right?
I understand,
So,
Mrs. Ackler,
yeah.
and that's the case, but we also, the peace officers have the option of using the bylaw, or there's usually a parallel provincial law, which offers a much stricter sanction, and then is also prosecuted by the provincial prosecutor on our behalf,
Gotcha.
without cost. And that's an option that is, my opinion, gauged very accurately by the officers, given the response or the initial contact with the person, the level of, verbal compliance or the vulgarity or the nastiness that we'll put up with during a traffic stop because someone doesn't like being stopped.
Okay, thanks, Peg.
Anybody else? Okay, I just, I want to thank you guys. This bus parking, which we know is probably the most controversial part of this, but I mean, it's obviously, there's communities that have been not allowing it for years. Looks like Stettler, like 15 plus years. So, I don't know how we're supposed to direct bylaw to say, well, this person is good, but that person isn't. So unless you guys have got some um, feedback for these guys, because I think all we're doing is set them up for how are they supposed to answer it? Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, just in the previous bylaw, it allows it, but it also gives enforcement upon a bona fide complaint to disallow it. So the tool, the mechanism is there.
We haven't, if I may just add, Mrs. Colberg and Mr. Kalava, we have not disallowed anyone. We've asked people to move or adjust the position over the years. In my time as a police officer and as a peace officer and in my present position, we have asked people. We have not, and I would hesitate to question the authority as well to summarily disallow the parking unless it was such an egregious, right, location or incident had happened that I wouldn't feel it's my authority, quite frankly, without doing further work. I mean, as I said, by egregious, I mean something serious, perhaps a death, bad location, lack of cooperation on the part of the driver. For the most part, when these things are pointed out, as I said, except for one particular case, we generally are received. I put this ahead in the spirit as a public safety, taking large vehicles out the street. I understand the community, what they're saying, and I understand where council's coming from. I really do. And we are prepared to make whatever council would like. But for the most part, when we do ask someone, we do get fairly good cooperation. And yes, I'm sorry, I will move it. I will adjust it. I came home in a hurry. I parked perhaps 8 feet where I usually park, things like that. We could come up with some more, if it would offer some comfort to council, some perhaps qualifying rules that might be reasonable. We could come back with that doesn't disqualify the parking if that's what council would like to continue to allow, but perhaps some qualifying rules that would perhaps enhance our enforcement of it, or in the name of public safety. I'm only saying that I will, but whatever.
Yeah, I think in fairness to you guys, we got to figure, something's got to be put in place because, I mean, I probably had 7 complaints, buses that are kind of parked on the same street and basically, I mean, it affects people's view, it affects their looking around. I mean, there's got to be something, but yet then there's a bus, I know I have one near me that doesn't affect anything. So, but it's like telling this person you can have that, but that one you can't. So we need to see what you guys can come up with. Cause I
Certainly,
think
yes.
in fairness to the bus drivers, in fairness to you guys, we can't be wishy-washy. And obviously, not saying that we have to be like everybody else, but it looks like the bulk of everybody around us doesn't allow bus parking. So, maybe there's something there we got to figure out. Anyways, that's my thoughts there. As far as 43.6, we need to have merchandise on sidewalks because, we're trying to promote sidewalk sales and and tourism kind of thing. So maybe just kind of review that one. Maybe it's event specific or seasonal
You
specific.
mean outside of permitting, Mrs. Colbert, outside of?
Yeah, outside
getting a permit?
merchandising, I think it's
Thank you.
just, you know, because we want to encourage businesses to make the street look inviting and active and
So in conjunction with a larger event, or what would you?
I don't know. I don't think even an event, maybe it's just gotta be, they can put merchandise, but as long as it doesn't hazard the ability for pedestrians or something like that. Just cause you know, I know you go to other communities, it's kinda neat when you walk along the street and they have racks out and then that rack brings you into the store and so something like that. This RV parking, uh, I know it's been it's hard for the RV owners as well when they come to the valley. So now that we're doing this whole Rails to Trails program and we're looking at Community Futures was nice enough to step up and have the main station over close to wherever we put the road across. Maybe over there we can maybe actually create an RV parking space and really promote the RVs as they come right into town that, you know, go straight, turn right near, you have actual RV parking. And then that goes back to our wayfinding signs where we can say, once you're parked here, you're 2-minute walk to downtown or 4 minutes to here or
You mean
7 minutes to
Community
there.
Futures, sorry.
Yeah, right by Community Futures. I think if we can actually designate an RV parking, once they hit the valley, like, cause they're usually coming in off, you know, 9 or, well, both ways off of 9, but
So
if we can,
limited time parking, but no, like overnight, not staying overnight.
yeah, not overnight. We don't wanna promote overnight, but if they're coming in for the day or, cause yeah, we don't wanna, you know, we don't wanna stop them from coming, but I think if you're driving those big rigs, you probably wanna know where to park conveniently anyways. Um, and the speeding, I think, um, one of those signs, those solar operated ones that I've saw when you go through Bicycle, if we could plant 4 or 5 of those around, I think, I don't know why, but they slow me down. I'm sure I can't be the only one that sees that blinking thing and brings my speedometer down. So maybe those are easy, quick fixes to help make our community more safe. All right, those are my thoughts. Anything else you want to send them off with? So for the listening public, we right now will vote on second reading of the traffic bylaw. What that means is whether council votes for or against or whatever they decide, but then it comes back to us again for third reading. So what we ask administration is to take the thoughts that were shared this time, review them, see if they can adjust anything that can help us get to a comfortable resolution to vote for third reading. So again, there's still time for people to give input if you have it. So council, all in favor of second reading of the traffic bylaw? Carried. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Trent.
Thank you.
I know it's lots of work and we'll get this one done. Okay, so now we shall move on to 7.2. Mauricio.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tonight, we are bringing to Council Bylaw 01.23 line of credit borrowing bylaw. This is a bylaw that we already have. It was the last bylaw that was passed by Council was in 2020, and it is bylaw 11.20. This time, we are asking Council to consider increasing the limit that we can temporarily borrow from 4 million to 10 million. Currently, we are using or we have a $2 million line of credit. So we are not using the entire 4 million, or we are not set up to use that yet. The main reason why we are asking for an increase is to be able to help us finance any needs that we have in 2023. And the main reason I explain under the discussion portion of my report is that in the last year, we have had significant capital expenditures. In 2022, we had nearly $18 million in capital expenses, and about 10 million of that relate to the flood mitigation project. As we all know, the flood mitigation project started around 2019, and it's expected to be completed somewhere in 2024 or 2025. So far, we have spent around $27 million in the project. One of the things that we know is that for the federal portion of the funding, we are expected to be funded around 40% of the total cost of the project. But one of the things that happen is we have to incur the cost and pay for it and then submit a claim to the federal government. So far, we have submitted 3 claims, and we are going to be submitting, or the flood office will be submitting a 4th claim up to the end of 2022. When that claim is submitted, we estimate that the receivable from DMAF will be around $6 million to $6.5 million. And right now, as I mentioned, we have submitted the claims, but we haven't received any funds yet. So this has put a lot of pressure on the finances for the town to use the funds that we had available for operations, but also we had to withdraw funds from investments. So in the last 12 months, we have withdrawn approximately $10 million from our investments. And you will see that when we bring the financial statements in April, the end of April or early May for approval. We feel that increasing the line of credit, because it's temporary financing, is a better option than to continue to liquidate investments, because ultimately it will have a negative impact on our investment revenue, and we will have less holdings at the end of the year if we continue to do that. We have had discussions with the bank. They do not have any issues with this request. As long as council approves the bylaw, they will be happy to help us with the remainder. It will take some time before we get that approval because there is a process. But yeah, we have had all those discussions and they are ready to continue should we seek that path. Right now, I indicate that the prime rate is around 6.45%. Our borrowing rate is actually less than the prime, so it's 0.75 less than prime. So that would work out to be around 5.7%. And tonight we are asking council to give all 3 readings to this bylaw so that we can continue talking to the bank and have access to up to $10 million. I want to mention that this is temporary borrowing, so it's not intended to be borrowed and continue for a long time. As soon as we can lower the balance, any balance that we would have on the line of credit, we will do that. Especially when we collect the funds from DMAP, it will go straight to that. You have a copy of the bylaw. Basically, it's very similar. It's just there have been some minor changes. I have also included an Appendix 2, a copy of the debt limit calculation, just to give you an idea. Now, because this is borrowing that is temporary, it does affect the borrowing, but because we haven't taken any loans yet that we intended to take in 2022, we do have capacity for this. Finally, I have included the debt management policy for your review. I just want to let you know that in the debt management policy, short-term borrowing is not identified, but this is an old bylaw that we are going to be reviewing this year, and we are going to be bringing an updated uh, policy to council later on this year.
Thanks, Mauricio. Can I get a motion, please? Tony?
Yeah, I move that council give first reading to the line of credit borrowing bylaw 01.23 as presented.
Seconder, please. Patrick, all in favor? Carrie, can I get a motion for second reading, please? Crystal?
I move that council give second reading to the line of credit borrowing bylaw 01.23 as presented.
Seconder, please. Tony, comments? Lisa?
So just so I'm understanding this correctly, that still keeps us under the 60% of the bylaw, the borrowing bylaw that we used to have? Okay.
Yes, it will. Mainly because we haven't taken any loans in 2022. As you can see, before taking any loans that were approved in 2022, the capacity under the policy is 12.8 million. So it would be,
Perfect.
yes, significantly
you.
less.
Yes, thanks, Mauricio. I think you've explained that quite clearly. Just again, for the benefit of the listening public, this increase in the operating line would be required. It's a cash flow issue, so we are paying contractors prior to receipt of funds. Once funds are delayed sufficiently, and we're at 6.5 billion now, it's kind of difficult to pay contractors on a $2 million line of credit, $6.5 million in bills. So this is a temporary, it will be retired from funding that's coming through. It's just to do the timely outlay of money pending the receipt of the money. So I'm all in support of the town continuing to pay its bills on a timely manner.
Tom?
So it says flood mitigation has spent $27 million. So how much have we received from provincial and federal government?
From the provincial government, they have given us all the funding that they committed. So we received, I believe it was like 8 million before, right? Before 2020, we received around $8 million in two grants. And in 2020, we received 20 million for the purchase, to allow us to purchase properties. So the 28 million has been received. From the federal government, we haven't received anything yet.
Not a cent.
Nothing, not yet.
Not a cent. So the debt servicing costs and the interests, that will be paid by the federal government money when and if we get it?
I would have to ask Ding and to confirm, but I don't think that's not it's covered by the grant.
So we have to borrow money, but pay for the costs of the borrowing of that money because we're waiting for federal money to come in.
Essentially, there is an opportunity cost by carrying a receivable for so long. On $6 million, let's say that we were taking those funds and investing it now, we would be able to earn up to $390,000 a year. So that's the opportunity cost. So if we are taking investments out of our portfolio, we are giving up investment revenue, right? So the alternative is give up investment revenue or borrow. There is a cost no matter what.
Okay.
Stephanie?
So what you're saying is the investment value's higher than the interest we would incur?
Right now, if we were able to invest, yes, we could find investments that would earn higher rates. in our portfolio, we have investments that are earning whatever rate we were able to lock at the time when we invested, right? So if we were to sell those, we could potentially see a decline on the funds. Uh, so that's why it's not recommended that we sell them at this point.
Okay, so the $390,000 you're saying we'd incur in, like, that we would make in investments would be greater than any interest incurred on the loan?
It could potentially be, yes, depending on the length of the investment and all that, for sure.
Okay, thanks, Mauricio.
Anybody else? Okay, so bottom line is where the funds for the feds, they've committed to the funds. It's just the process that they expect us to jump hoops through. So, in fact, Daryl and I are working with the feds right now, pushing them, saying, enough's enough. We're just a small community. It's not that they're saying they're not paying it. It's just the process that they make us incur the cost before then they're submitted, then they gotta review them, so yeah, it is a process, and I'm not sure what else you got any connections in the federal government, but we're working on it, so, yeah. So anyways, all in favor of second reading? Yes, okay. All right, can I get consent to go to third reading, please? Patrick?
I move that council give unanimous consent to third reading of the line of credit borrowing bylaw 01.23.
Seconder, please, Lisa? All in favor? Carrie, can I get a motion for third reading, please? Tony?
I move that council give third reading to the line of credit borrowing bylaw 01.23 as presented.
Seconder, Lisa, comments? All in favor? Carried. All right, we will get hold of our MP as well on this and push the bar there as well. Okay, let's move on to 7.3.1, please, Darren.
Thank you and good evening, as well as Happy New Year. Before you today is a request for decision. It's on the Community Assistant Grant application from the Badlands Amphitheater. So they are requesting support for their annual Operation fundraising campaign, which we heard about, Light Up the Amp, for the winter 2023 season. They were present at council back on December 12th with a presentation and mentioned this application at that time. They're asking that it be available to pay for hard costs of operations such as utilities, salaries, site maintenance, and ticket system, etc., and that the funding support their operation costs for the upcoming year. They provided that presentation, as I said. In their opinion, the project would benefit the community by assisting with operations through the time period, allowing staff to continue the work as they plan and produce the 2023 season. And it's in their estimate that it brings in 20,000 visitors and $4 million in tourism. Their request is in a total amount of $25,000. In the 2023 2023 operational budget, council approved a grant program for cash under the community assistance program for $15,000 in cash, as well as $20,000 for in-kind work. So we've provided some options there for council's consideration. Approve the request in the full amount of $25,000, which would exceed the 2023 approved budget amount. And this would leave zero cash funds available for other applicants in this upcoming year, as well as having to find a way to make up the difference of the grant. Council could choose not to fund the request, or council could request a representative from the Badlands Amphitheater to attend the next meeting on January 16th of the Committee of the Whole to be able to answer any questions that you might have on this application. It is administration's recommendation that we go with option 3, the council approve and as presented the request for representation from the amphitheater to attend the upcoming meeting so that they may answer questions that you may have. As mentioned, in the 2023 operational budget, The amounts that were budgeted for was 15,000 cash and 20,000 for in-kind work. In the 2022 Community Assistance Grant, we had requests for approximately $6,300, of which one applicant withdrew. And then that made the request for cash amounts about approximately $4,500. Of that $4,500, it was about $4,000 that was approved and distributed. This fits with strategic policy alignment as council has wished to provide a safe and inclusive recreation opportunity for residents and visitors, as well as with the beautification initiative, as well as financial responsibility.
Thanks, Darren. Can I get a motion, please? Council, Stephanie?
I move that council directs administration to request that representation from the Badlands AMP attend the January 16th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting to discuss the Community Assistance Grant application for $25,000.
Seconder, please. Lisa? Comments? Tom?
Yeah, a couple of comments. And maybe Tony can answer this. When we were looking at COVID support for businesses, did we not include in that nonprofits as well, of which the Badlands AMP would be one? And I can't remember how or what we kind of did or approved for them, because I mean I'm looking at, you know, the effect of COVID on businesses and organizations in the community, and the Badlands AMP Passion Play is probably the poster child for the most negatively affected organization in the entire valley. So I'm just wondering, did we give assistance to nonprofits? I can't remember how that worked and what we did, or.
Feedback, anyone?
Off the top of my head, Tom, I don't recall us giving any nonprofits assistance. I think in most cases, their funding, like their expenses went to zero because they stopped their services they were providing. So I don't recall us or council making a decision to fund any nonprofits during that period of time. So.
Tony?
Yeah, there was, back in the high throes of COVID there was, some discussion amongst a committee that was established, that economic recovery committee coming out of COVID. But, you know, how do we bring these businesses back that, do survive and make them thrive again? But there was never any funding, or it didn't go any further than that, other than a discussion, recognizing it would be a challenge for all business to come back out of COVID.
Tom?
Sorry. Yeah, my second question, the community assistant grant was, from my recollection, my memory isn't as good as what it used to be, was basically a creature of council. I mean, we came up with that because we used to get requests every second week from this organization and that organization asking for money. And we could never kind of say, well, this organization is worth more than this organization. And we never, the administration didn't have a hope of budgeting because we never knew how much money we were going to approve. And so that's why we came up with this community assistance grant. From my recollection, we used to approve all of the requests from council. And I'm not sure why or when we got away from that, but I mean, over the last year or two, I know requests have been approved. Now, maybe Darren does that, or I'm not sure how that works now, but I remember originally, we basically, all of the requests came to council, and we kind of, so can you recollect what happened there, or why that got away from council like that?
Sure can, Tom. So we we created the policy actually shortly. It was actually before I became CAO because we were having such a hard time with everyone coming to individuals on council going, hey, I need a truckload of gravel. Hey, if you guys can get the Bobcat to come over, hey, I need $2,000. So we want to standardize it so that we could keep track of it and so that so that everyone would know. The policy says that any cash contribution over $5,000 comes to council, and anything less than that is approved by the CAO or delegated down. So the small ones have come to me or have been delegated down to Darren to deal with. The in-kind ones are generally public works related, so Dave deals with those again unless they're very large. The last community sort of assistance grant, I guess, that we think about that was a bigger dollar amount was the contribution for the resurfacing of the tennis come pickleball courts, right? So that was I know, yeah. Well, I was going to say that the policy was invented when pickleball was just a little kid. So um, but that's the last big one that's come to council. But there were a couple. I think Legion was one of them before that, and a few others. So, but generally, they've all been small cash ones the last few years. So.
Yeah, I guess further to that, I'm wondering if we could get maybe a little bit more regular reports, like even once a month kind of a thing that, okay, in our community assistance fund, we've had 2 requests and this is what they were. And then because I've had people ask me, can I do a community assistance goal? And I go, well, I don't know how much to spend. Like, I mean, we have X amount of dollars for a year. I don't know if there's 10,000 left or 2,000 or whatever. So if we could maybe even on the little ones, even have a little bit of a report on that, that would be good.
Anybody else? Tony?
Yeah, well, I recognize the importance of the Badlands AMP and its impact on our economy and the dollars that they do spin off. I don't see any value in bringing them forth for a presentation. I think good decision needs to be made. The ask is 25. Our assistance is 15, which has been increased from 10. In a very tough year that we had trying to balance this budget. So unless my colleagues see some value in having a presentation done, I can't support the ask at 25. I would think it fits somewhere south of 5,000 maybe. And that's where I would want to go with it.
Lisa?
Just remind me, have we done a supportive operational before or more infrastructure?
So we have done a little bit of both over the years. I can say that there was 2 not-for-profit applications in 2020. One was specific to utilities and one was specific to staff wages, and both were denied.
Thank you.
Patrick?
I tend to agree with Councillor Locker that this is above the budget that we have put in, and it would also, extinguish the fund before the year even really begins. I don't know the value of them coming back. They did do a presentation last week. They provided financials here, and even with those, they didn't seem to add a lot, just simply because audited financial statements are over a year old, and it doesn't really show the position that they're in and their need at this point. So if they could answer that question, maybe, but at this point, yeah, I don't see why we would approve this at this point.
Anybody else? Okay, so the motion reads that the request is to have representative come. Would you so I'm gonna just say, are you in favor of the motion or opposed of the motion? So you're in favor of them coming or opposed? So all in favor of the motion as it sits? 2, 4 opposed? 5. Did you get that, Denise? Okay, motion defeated. All right. Now we are moving on to closed session. So council, can I get a motion, please?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So I just want to sort of finish that off because we're kind of leaving it hanging here. So then our recommendation then is that we'll bring back something based on kind of what we've heard from Councillor Locker and Kalafa to the 23rd's meeting. If you, or is it less than 5,000 where you're suggesting to delegate that authority to the CAO? Okay, that's where Councillor Locker is going. So can someone, I would suggest that someone makes that motion then to say that we are proposing that use something, and I guess the trouble is something less, like $49.95. Is it? I think from our standpoint, I think we need to go back to them to say this is what council's willing to do. Are you okay with that? And then see what they want to have come back, right? Because my comment is like I'm a bit struggling with the fact of if we say it's less than 5, we can make that recommendation back to them to say here's $49.99 or 5,000, knowing that may or may not satisfy their concern, and maybe they want to come back. But I think that's if that's what you want, council. I think so I'm okay with that. So
Tony?
Just to add clarity then, we can't support 25 because it's more than the fund is. So the idea here would be to outright decline the 25 and look for a figure perhaps that they could reapply for that falls in a substantially lower amount and meets the same requirements we've used in the past to approve or decline, as Darren outlined. So yeah, change the amount or do the application or whatever, but there has to be enough money left here for the rest of the people in the community. So spread it accordingly, I think.
Crystal?
Okay, so I'm just a little bit confused. So, I posed a motion for them to present. That was the motion, correct? Does that mean it's completely off the table of the assistance grant?
no,
Okay.
what it means is that the motion was defeated to have them come and present
Right.
their budget. So, but as it stands right now, they have requested the community assistance
Yeah.
of 25,000.
Right.
Which again, over 5,000, only council can approve or deny. So I think probably a further motion then, goes back to what I said a couple minutes ago, is that council needs to make a motion to say what they want to do with the request as presented.
Right.
Okay, so I would suggest if you're thinking along Councillor Locker's line of making a motion to say you will not support 25,000 and have them resubmit with an appropriate ask.
That was
Something
going
to
to
that
be my
effect.
suggestion. It's a new application. All right.
Yes, I'm gonna just give everybody a chance here to voice before we kind of get this motion, so we have it straight. So Lisa, you had something?
Just a quick question. How many times a year can they apply for that? Is it just a one-time shot, or say like 6 months down the road, if there's funds still available, can they come back?
So I think the intent is to be able to request for a specific item, right? So that's specific. So you could have different specific items, right? So we want money to fund. I'm not going to throw any suggestions, but something X, and then come back in 4 months' time to request to fund Y, right? And those would all be considered equally, just as they always are. But I think if you came back to fund more with a request to fund X more, then again, they would be looked at, but more likely than not be favorably looked at.
So is it fair to say they should be more specific in their ask rather than the things that are listed?
Yeah, yes.
Tom?
Yeah, just a question on the grant. It says the 2023 total amount $15,000 cash, 20,000 for in-kind work. So is that the same in 2022? So in
Yes, it is.
2022, we gave out $3,984.37.
Yes, the asks came in at, or was it here? The asks for cash came in at approximately $4,900.
Out of 15,000 available. And that's all we gave out?
Yeah, I think it was only 10 last year.
Oh, sorry.
We upped it this year.
10,000 cash last year and we gave out 39?
No, it had to be more than that.
That's what it says here.
In cash, no, it was just their 39,000 here.
Okay, well, I think this gotta be, Tom's asked for it to come back on a regular basis, so I think this will help us if we know exactly what those numbers are.
Sure.
So, okay, so that solves that. Now I just need a motion, please, to direct administration. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I don't know the exact wording of this. Maybe Denise can figure it out. But something to the effect that I would move to request the Badlands AMP reapply to the Community Assistance Fund.
I think you have to say at the start that that the motion is that you have to, council's denying their request as presented, and you're requesting.
Well, we've already defeated that.
No, you've requested, you're denying you defeated them to come to the meeting next week to discuss the with a presentation. So now this is the motion for the actual,
Reapply
request. So you're denying the request as of $25,000 as presented, and request that the Badlands AMP
reapply for a lesser amount
reapply
or
for
something.
an appropriate amount.
So 5,000 is what we're thinking, or
For an appropriate amount.
not
Let them
exceeding
come up.
5,000?
Sure. Yeah.
Did you get that, Denise? All right. For a specific purpose.
Yeah. With specificity to their funds identified in the application.
Okay, you're okay, Denise? No, just give her a minute. I'll get her to read it back.
How about move to deny the Badlands AMP Community Assistance Grant request for $25,000. Sorry, move to deny the Badlands AMP Community Assistance request as for $25,000 and request that they reapply to the grant with a specific
Items.
not exceeding $5,000.
Right.
Thanks, Denise. Can I get a seconder? Lisa. Any other comments? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Denise. All right, council, we now have to go in closed session for 16-17. Can I get a motion, please? Lisa.
I move that we close the meeting to the public to discuss land, transactions, and personnel as per FOIP 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of the third party, and FOIP 17, disclosure harmful to personal privacy.
Seconder, please. Tony, all in favor? Carried. All right, everyone, thank you for being with us. We will be back next week and wishing you all a fabulous week and a wonderful 2023.